So Polyplexus is a recognition that in the last 20 years, the world has changed, and it's changed in a very fundamental way. Information is flowing faster and more easily than it ever has. It's a global information exchange now, and Polyplexus is DARPA's attempt to take advantage of that information flow to do our job better. And what Polyplexus is attempting to do is to enable information exchange across wide ranges of disciplines, ultimately resulting in better ideas and better proposals that the National Science Foundation and DARPA and other government agencies can actually fund and keep new science emerging. So what is novel about Polyplexus is we're leveraging modern communications. And when I talk about modern communications, I'm talking about things like Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. And we're using that and applying those very rapid and low barrier to entry communication technologies to dissemination of scientific results. And so what's new in Polyplexus is this ability to understand information from a broad range of scientific disciplines. If I'm a researcher, there's so much research information coming out from the global research community that I'm really only able to understand a tiny sliver of it that's around my discipline. And what Polyplexus is trying to do is enable people to understand a much broader range of literature, much broader range of information, and apply all those new learnings into their specialty. Well, one of the things we'd like Polyplexus to turn into is a place where every scientist pops on it every day or so for 5 minutes to see what the areas of activity are. And in that sense, it's almost like a news feed, right? But it's going to be the broadest news feed you can possibly find. It's going to be the most current news feed you can possibly find. We feel that Polyplexus is a game changer because many of the breakthroughs that you see in science and technology are the result of disparate disciplines sort of grinding together and exchanging DNA, if you will, and both disciplines become better. That becomes harder and harder as we end up with more and more disciplines, which is what's happening in the scientific world. One of the key foundational elements of Polyplexus is what we're calling the micropublication. We've been accused of creating Twitter for scientists, and that's sort of what a micropublication is. The fundamental element of science and technology information exchange is the technical paper. And technical papers are thousands of words long. They take a long time to write. They also take a long time to read and understand. And so what we're trying to do with the micropublication is to get authors of technical papers to tell the world what they should know from their research, reduce their paper to a few interesting and compelling statements about what everyone else should know from their research, and share that information in a very quick and efficient way. Those little bits of information are micropublications. Micropublications are very short. We actually have two types. There's an evidence micropublication, which are things that we think are fact based upon previous research. Those are 200 characters long, so it's a very tweet-like structure. They're different than tweets, though, because every evidence micropublication is actually backed up by a technical reference, which is a scientific paper or a thesis or a dissertation. And so they have some rigor attached to them, but they're also very short and sweet. The second type of micropublication, which is my favorite micropublication, is the conjecture micropublication. And in a conjecture micropublication, you take two pieces of evidence and you express an opinion about what those two pieces of evidence might lead to if they were put together. And that's where the interesting, fun, creative, and actually competitive part of the process comes into play, because that's where ideas start. There is a unique aspect to Polyplexus where the evidence micropublications are about the past and the conjecture micropublications are about the future. And I'm not aware of any other information source where I can quickly get on, surf through the information, and get a sense for things that have already happened combined with where those things might lead. And that really is the core value proposition for both scientists and organizations funding science that Polyplexus offers. My favorite micropubs on Polyplexus is actually a series of micropubs where a group of social scientists have been interacting with a group of cybersecurity professionals. I don't think that conversation would have happened anywhere other than Polyplexus, but I think the cybersecurity people are gaining a better appreciation for behaviorally why people do the things they do to violate cybersecurity norms. And I think the social scientists are getting a great appreciation for what sort of nefarious things the technology enables. So I think it's been great for both communities. And again, I don't think this would have happened without Polyplexus. One element of Polyplexus is a game. And the game is about how well does your conjecture spread. And if you create a conjecture micropublication, which is basically a small little sliver of an idea, and you use a bunch of jargon to express that conjecture micropublication, it's not going to spread because people aren't going to understand it. So we are really trying to get people to express themselves in a way that a broad spectrum of the scientific community will understand them. And if we do that, that will actually, a side effect of that will be to accelerate the creation of interesting ideas, accelerate the creation of fundable ideas, and accelerate science development in general. If you're a university researcher and you want to do your job as best as you can do it, Polyplexus is an enabler for that. It allows you to put the best ideas forward to funding agencies to support your research. If you're a program manager at DARPA or other government funding agencies, Polyplexus allows you to mine the best ideas possible. And one of the fundamental things that's changed really over about the last 40 years is the United States used to be the unquestioned science and technology leader in the world. And in the last decade or so, much of the rest of the world has actually risen to the point where they are very competitive with us. And we need ways of maintaining technology competitiveness. And this is one of the ways that I see for doing that. So it's an economic security issue to me. It's also a national security issue to me. And it's also a productivity issue for our United States research and development community. The world is not going to become a less competitive place. It's going to become a more competitive place. And if we in the United States science and technology community become complacent and believe that it is our birthright that we're going to have the best technology, that's the fastest way to lose. There's an element of Polyplexus that essentially gives researchers the ability to advertise the research that they do. Advertising helps them in a number of ways. It lets other people, basically it lets other people know what they're doing, so other people can take advantage of their research. It also allows other people to reference the papers that they write in a much more broad and efficient way. That's turns out is hugely important for an academic. We also have people on the research sponsor side. We're working with government right now. We're going to be working with private industry in the very near future, and both organizations need the ability to fund and foster research where they have challenges and problems. To me, the fun part of Polyplexus is popping on the platform, reading all the micropubs from yesterday, and reading an interesting new piece of learning from social science and anthropology and electrical engineering and cybersecurity. And those are things I would not be exposed to in my normal reading, because there's just no stream of new learning that has that breadth. The broader Polyplexus gets, the more valuable it gets, because it's really all about exposing people across the science and technology spectrum to information from across the science and technology spectrum. And the goal is to turn that cross-pollination into better research proposals, better science and technology, which actually helps us all. DARPA is looking at funding 4 projects out of Polyplexus this year, 2018. That may ramp up to about 10 in 2019 and about 20 in 2020. And so the idea is, DARPA thinks this is important for the competitiveness of the national science and technology enterprise, and so they want to sort of accelerate the process of acceptance of the platform over the next 3 years. Today, a researcher creates a single proposal and sends it to a single sponsor and gets a single decision based upon that proposal. What we'd really like to achieve in Polyplexus is a researcher could come pursue an idea and get it in front of many sponsors and hopefully vastly increase the probability of that research getting funded. Access to Polyplexus ultimately is going to be public. And we hope that anyone who has something to contribute to the conversation, to the advancing conversation, will participate in the environment. Frequently successful software platforms like this end up getting used in a different way than their designers intended them to get used. I'm really fascinated by the thought of seeing where Polyplexus is going to go, because I think it's absolutely unique, it's really valuable, and I'm interested in finding out who it's going to be ultimately really valuable to.